Hey, good evening, everyone. John Henry Soto here again, along with George Batista. Welcome to Counterparts, where we spotlight conversations with creative minds. And today, my gosh, the creative mind is back. Steve Smith is back with us again for another visit. We're going to be talking about upcoming performances, the Legend Modern Drummer magazine. We're going to be talking about a visit that George. Oh, we have so much stuff. You guys got to hang out because it's going to be amazing. So please just come on back. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And George, I'm going to turn it over right to you because you know what happens when I start talking.
Yes, we all know what happens.
We have a lot to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just really quick for our sponsor. The Counterpart Show is brought to you by Wellness Resources, a family-owned and operated nutritional supplement company providing the highest quality clinically formulated supplements since 1985. Make sure you check them out at myvitaminresource.com. And if you enter the promo code Counterparts, you will receive free shipping on all orders. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got the man is back. Mr. Steve Smith is with us. Just very quickly, I don't want to take up too much time, but Steve Smith has not only been a member of the rock band journey across 3 tenures, but he is also will be celebrating his 40 years of music with his own group, Vital Information. This September and October, he will be playing shows for an unprecedented 5 weeks with 5 different groups at New York City's Birdland Jazz Club, including with his own group, Vital Information. And I got to hang with him. I am absolutely honored to call him a friend, and we are honored to have him on this show again. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Steve Smith.
Right. All right.
Hello.
Hello and welcome.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
We have to address a technical. Thank you. I'm hearing a major echo. How do I fix that?
Do you have your head? Oh, you do have headsets.
Yeah.
On. Okay. You may have your microphone might be feeding back.
All right. I took the headphones off. That's better.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
Back into the thing. So
sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Cool. Well, welcome back. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this evening. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. How are you?
I'm good. I'm gonna just check. There's a thing that says echo cancellation. Okay, that's on. Good. All right, I'm good.
All right. Okay.
Sorry about all that.
Okay.
No problem.
Yeah, it's nice to do a part 2. We did a very detailed part 1 especially about my Vital Information album the 4 albums that were just released. Yeah, the Columbia recordings. So yeah,
absolutely.
So it's good to be back and talk about a few other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to actually ask George to start the conversation,
okay,
as I usually do. And I guess one of the things we're excited about is the shows that are coming up in September. So, George, what dates were those? It was
it starts on September 16th.
September 16th to October 16th.
Yes.
And I mean, that is incredible. 5 weeks.
It is.
That you're going to be there.
I would have to pull up my calendar to go over everything, but essentially I'm going to be at the Birdland Jazz Club in New York City. It's quite close to Times Square, right. And I'll be playing there September 16, 17, 18 with Vital Information. A new incarnation of Vital Information. And then the following week, I do a week of music of John Coltrane. Wow. With an all-star New York Jazz all-star lineup. We're going to be playing the complete album Giant Steps to celebrate John Coltrane's birthday, which occurs that week. Yeah. And so then the next week I'm there with a different group playing the music of Bud Powell.
Mhm.
And then the next 2 weeks I'll be playing the music of Thelonious Monk. So it'll be five weeks at Birdland, which I love playing at Birdland, but I've never played 5 weeks
Yeah.
in a consecutive week. So it'll be pretty awesome.
Yeah. How do the rehearsals go for that? Is it in person? Is it a lot of charts being emailed back and
So
forth?
that's a fair question. I will rehearse for Vital Information. We'll have 2 days of rehearsal. But with the other groups, there's really no rehearsal other than the sound check before the first gig.
Wow.
So we all have to do our homework
Yeah.
and learn the music, and then we loosely put it together at the first sound check. And then my experience is it starts good and then gets better and better as the week goes on. And we play 2 sets a night, and it just, it takes off, but then it's the band learns the music and we learn how to play with each other, because they're all different lineups with some musicians I played together with before and some musicians that I have not played with before.
Okay.
So that's a pretty typical situation in the New York jazz world to put these things together, because we have the common language of knowing this music and knowing how to play that music, and it works to not rehearse, because that music is spontaneous, and we are following a blueprint. We're playing a song, playing the form of the song, but there's a lot of freedom to interpret it differently every night. So
yeah, and that's what I was going to say. That's the exciting part of it, because you're playing with musicians that, like you said, some that you haven't played with, but the language, and then everyone brings their own essence, their own feel for that music that everyone loves equally, and you put that together for an audience. I mean, what a treat, that's just like, really, that's what it's all about. And New York City has, you're right, it's just like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow night? What are you doing tomorrow night? What are you doing tomorrow night?
Yeah,
that kind of thing. You gotta be on your game.
And Birdland, actually, there's 2 rooms at Birdland now. There's the main club upstairs, and I'll be playing at the main club the week of the John Coltrane. We call it Coltrane Revisited, the Coltrane tribute. But the other weeks I'm playing in what's called the Birdland Theater, which is downstairs, and that seats about 90 people. So that will be quite intimate. And the details are on the vitalinformation.com website. And you can, of course, also go to the Birdland website for reservations and to get the information about the show times and all of that.
Yeah, definitely. I'll put the site up there so you can get all the details. One of the joys that George and I had was going to the Bottom Line back in the day, and just sitting just a few feet away from our heroes, and just having that incredible feeling. And those intimate shows are, it's really amazing that jazz, the musicians on jazz, that play jazz are they're just incredible musicians, the best on the planet, but you can get close, you can get close. You can really feel the music. Yeah, I can't get close to, I don't particularly want to get close to like Beyonce, although she's, I don't, nothing against Beyonce, but I don't want to be in the, maybe I should stop talking. But you know what I mean? It's like,
well, I like to address that, because it's more, it's I love being in the room with great jazz musicians.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said for actually hearing the sound they're producing on their instruments live off of the stage.
Yes.
So you're not hearing a recording, which we're so programmed to just listen to videos and listen to music on headphones or even great speakers. And even when you go to see Beyonce or a big act, you're hearing it through speakers.
Right.
But when you're in those clubs, you're going to hear my drums and my cymbal come off the stage, and you're going to hear the saxophone like a few feet away, and the piano. So you're not hearing it, even though there is some PA there, but it's just to make up, like, if to help the bass player get across, or some of the piano, but you're essentially hearing the acoustic instruments coming off the stage. And there's just like that can change your DNA. It did for me. Really, when I sat in a room with Tony Williams or Buddy Rich or Elvin Jones and Billy Cobham, like we talked about the last time, it's just it's incredible.
It's funny that John and I were having this exact conversation even before you came on. We were talking about, like, again, going back to seeing Rush for the first time, when we got to sit pretty close on the ground floor when we first saw them, and actually hearing Neil Peart's drums actually live. Okay.
Yeah, you were close enough. You could hear
the actual hit, not just
exactly.
The speaker.
But he was even seeing you live. I saw you live. I saw Weckl live, and all these. And you see you guys on video, and it's one thing. But man, when you're actually sitting there and watching you do it in real time, you're absolutely right. It does change your DNA.
One point on that, I saw Santana. I was lucky enough to get like front row seats to see Santana years ago. And he was talking, and he dropped a pick, and I heard the pick land.
Really?
I was that close. I mean, he was literally right in front of me, and the pick, it hit the mic stand, and it just bounced off. And he grabbed another one, but he was talking at the time; he wasn't playing. I heard the pick drop. I mean, you know what that pick hitting the ground was to me? It was like, oh my god!
Well, you had some good hearing in those days.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, he was talking, and he was in mid sentence, and it. And I was like, he dropped his pick. So those kinds of things, you're right. The DNA is like so important. I love this. I love to talk about these things. So when you're heading into, I'm sorry, George, I know you had a question. I'm me. I'll just go.
No. I just wanted to, kind of going back a second to the improvisation piece. I remember, for me, I've done that once or twice with a jazz band where it was either like one rehearsal and that was it, and we played the gig, and one of the guys showed up the day of the gig with a chart. Now, this was coming from a rock band that we rehearsed constantly to a jazz band that hardly didn't rehearse. I was petrified, because I was like, I knew the material because I was listening to it, but playing it is one thing.
Yeah.
But what I was lucky was that all these guys around me were so good that it elevated me to their level where I was able to like say, oh, okay, this is working. And of course there was some beautiful things that happened. So what you're saying when you said that, there's like no rehearsal, literally you're doing it that day.
Yeah.
Yes.
It brought back that feeling for me of doing that.
Right. No, it's a good way to play that kind of music.
Yeah. Right.
And especially because we're playing music that most of us have been playing these songs for years, or if we haven't, we're learning them, we'll get them pretty quickly. Right. But we're not bringing in original material. We're playing Thelonious Monk music, Powell music, and John Coltrane music. That's why with Vital Information, we're going to rehearse because we have our own set of music.
Right.
That will work with this lineup with Yannick Guizdala on bass and Manuel Valera on keyboards. So it'll be exciting.
That's so cool. I wanted to talk a little bit about Vital Information. This lineup that you're going out with. Can you tell us a little bit about two-part question? Why these guys, and how do you decide, like, what do you hear? What's the essence of a musician that has to have for you to actually say, I want this person to be part of Vital Information?
Well, the last time I played with Vital Information, it was March 2020. And some of the guys in the band were having some health issues. So I ended up getting Manuel to come in on the keyboards, and who I had not played with before, but he learned the music in like a couple of days and did an incredible job.
Wow.
And Yannick Gwizdala also came on board and played with us. And I had worked with Yannick with Mike Stern, and we had done a tour of Europe with Mike Stern and Randy Brecker, and I knew he was a fantastic bass player. And I played a few other gigs with him as well. And then a last minute thing happened last March, like right before the COVID lockdown. And I went to Australia and played with Vital Information for a week with Manuel, but we couldn't bring a bass player with us. The bass, it was a long story, but basically with visas and work permit, things like that, like we couldn't work that out on short notice. So we used an Australian bass player named Kim May. And as a trio, it sounded great with Manuel playing, keyboard, piano and synthesizers and electric bass and drums. The music sounded really good as a trio. So it made me decide, let's try this as a trio with Yannick on bass, who's a real virtuoso bass. He's a great soloist as well as a bass player. So when you have a trio, everyone needs to be a great soloist, right? Because you only have the three guys. Right. So exactly. We're all going to play parts. We play melodies and play solos. And the other thing I look for, people that are enjoyable to be on tour with.
Right.
That's really a thing. So we all get along. It's nice to spend time with these guys. And then ultimately, they're very good composers. So they'll be also writing music for the group. And because I look for that as well, I'm like, I can write some music, but I can't write a whole album's worth of material. I'm no prolific composer, but I'm a good co-composer and collaborator. And so then collectively we can create the music, and it will take on the shape of this new lineup. So each incarnation of Vital Information is unique in that it sounds like the people that are in the band, because we all write the music together. So every time there's a one or two band members change, the music changes to reflect who the new players are in the band.
I love that. That's like you're getting a new band, but sort of not.
No, sort of. I am,
and it's like
though I've been playing some of my previous material with the new lineup, but it'll be open to interpretation, and then eventually, I'm hoping sometime before 2023 there will be a new album, because actually 2023 is the 40th anniversary of Vital Information. That very first album called Vital Information that was released recently was recorded and released in 1983.
Wow.
That one with the brain on it.
Nice. I love it.
Yes, that one.
Brain.
40 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. That's so
unbelievable.
So awesome.
I wanted to ask you about just as far as writing and also charts. Now, so throughout your career, have you always written charts for pretty much everything that you do, even live, or do you just do some of it by ear, or is it a combination?
Yeah. Okay. Well, with Journey, I didn't write charts that first, from 78 to 85. I didn't write charts because when we wrote music, we wrote collectively in a rehearsal studio. So by the time the song was done, learned and rehearsed, I learned it just by playing it, and I didn't write any charts. Okay. But before that, for every other kind of music that I played, there was always a chart. So if it was a big band, it was a chart. When I went on tour with Jean-Luc Ponty, he had his own charts for that music. Okay. And then with Steps Ahead after Journey in 1986, they had charts. So there's usually always charts. Okay. And if there's not, I'll write my own chart.
Right. Okay.
I'll transcribe something. If they give me a recording to learn, I'll write my own chart. And sometimes it's extremely detailed if it needs to be. And other times it's pretty loose, just depending on, how much I need to write or not. Right. And I know I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit, but in the book that we're going to talk about,
Yes.
the Modern Drummer book, there are some of my handwritten charts in there that I wrote. And so when I played with Journey in 2016, I hadn't played that music for over 30 years. So of course I couldn't remember any of it. So I wrote myself charts. I listened to the recordings and wrote out charts, and I've included a few of those in the book, as well as some of the Mike Stern charts that I wrote for myself so I could learn the music.
Wow. That's awesome. Is it sometimes I think of like it's hard to not talk about Journey, right? I mean, it's was part of your journey, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but I think of Charlie Watts a lot also, and Steve Smith, where you both have this tremendous body of work in the jazz world, that actually exceeds a lot of the actual other, as far as recordings and shows and things like that. And is it difficult for you sometimes during that moment, during those years where you were with Journey, to balance that out?
In the early years, it was very difficult. But in the early, and I'm saying again, 78 to 85, but my main gig was Journey.
Right.
That was a year-round gig, and I would occasionally have some downtime, and a lot of times I did go out and play with other jazz musicians. So I'd go to Boston to play with some of my friends. That eventually, that lineup became the first incarnation of Vital Information. And I met a lot of very good jazz musicians in the Bay Area during that time. And so I did a lot of gigs with Tom Coster, who eventually became part of Vital Information. And he had just left Santana. So he's a great jazz musician. So I was working with him and Randy Jackson, very good jazz fusion bass player. So we had a band together, though there was a lot of people I was playing with in the Bay Area. But in those years, I was so focused on learning how to play that Journey music, meaning really developing from being mainly a jazz-based drummer to then expanding my palette to learn how to play rock. Convincingly, and the main change for a drummer, for me, was to be less of an improviser and more of a composer. So I had to learn how to compose a specific drum part. Okay, I need a verse groove, and then I need a fill that takes me into the chorus, and then a chorus groove, something separate for the bridge. It's not really the way I thought about playing jazz or even fusion. So in those early years, a lot of effort went into that. And then when I had downtime, I played jazz. Once I'd say mastered that whole concept of playing rock, and it became very integrated into my playing, it was easier to slide between worlds, because I wasn't really trying to totally reinvent myself. So I just have to put on the correct hat, and then get focused and do what that gig requires.
Did you ever come into a Journey rehearsal with like an odd time signature on something? And they're like, what are you?
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, the tune Frontiers, if you ever listen to the Journey album Frontiers, the actual track Frontiers has some, it's not odd times, but it's some really sideways sounding drumming. I came in with that, and everyone worked with it, and we actually came up with a song that started out with this kind of crazy beat.
Oh, that's so cool.
So it does happen.
Yeah.
And actually, in the early year, before I was in Journey, when the drummer was Ainsley Dunbar and before Steve Perry, they did have quite a few tunes with odd time signatures.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
But that ended basically once Steve Perry joined the band. Then the direction really changed.
Yeah, to 4/4 pop. melody, and his voice. It's
His amazing
so
voice.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, if you don't mind, I would love to talk a little bit about this.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I
Yes.
didn't mean to cover your face there. I apologize for that.
Okay.
It's like poof. But at least
All
you're
right.
on the cover. So
Yes.
how
So
does
it's 250 pages.
wow.
Yes. Yep.
And I love the back cover too.
Oh, that's so cool. Look at that.
Yeah, I've been featured in Modern Drummer 6 times, feature stories, and 5 of those are cover stories. So, so those are all reprinted in this book.
Yeah.
But that's only one part of the book. The interviewer, the person that really put it all together, Mark Griffith, he read all 6 features and came away with a conclusion. Every time I was in Modern Drummer, the interview was mainly about Journey or Vital Information.
Right.
And he's probably seen me in 15 different bands, in New York, various clubs around New York, because Mark is a great journalist. He's a good, very good book writer. I've employed him to write liner notes and help me with educational material that I put out on Hudson Music, like the Brushes DVD that we made. He wrote a book to go along with that. He's also a great drummer and a great teacher. And a good friend. So he's come to a lot of my gigs. So he said, let's not talk. We'll talk a little bit about Journey and Vital Information, but let's talk about everything else.
Right.
Let's talk about all these other gigs that you've done, which is what we did. So the first 40 pages is quite detailed, talking about many other groups that I've performed with or toured with or recorded with or something like that. So that's a big part of it. Then there's transcriptions of some of the songs I played on Journey, Vital Information, and lots of other things. Very, very good detailed transcriptions. And then I comment on what was going on that record and what was going on that track. There's also a download code that comes with the book. So you can download my solo drum set album. So I recorded an album of 14 solo pieces, not just kind of random drum solo, very, very like composed pieces of music performed on solo drum set. And I made it originally for an LP, and the LP was 22 minutes a side, and it's never been released digitally. So that it's called The Fabric of Rhythm, and that comes as a download. And then there's many pages of me describing each solo and what my concept was, what I had in mind that I was trying to accomplish on the solo. And there's columns I've written, a whole column of Indian rhythms and the use of Konako, which is a rhythmic language from South India that I've studied. So it goes on and on. There's really a lot there that essentially covers my entire playing career from the time I was just a youngster starting out at 9 years old to the present.
Wow. So it's almost a reference guide as well, because it has so much information in there for a musician to actually study on.
Yes,
Like a little encyclopedia kind of.
Right. And lots of photos. I went through thousands of photos in my collection. And so I think there's just dozens of them from every era and incarnation of the last 60 years.
Wow.
There's some great photos in there of you and friends, a lot of your musician friends and stuff like that, which is really, really cool. I enjoyed really looking through those and, reading through a lot of, it's a huge book. There's so much material, but reading through some of your interviews in there. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, which I didn't get a chance to ask you last time, was about Freddie
Gruber.
Yeah, Freddie Gruber and your time with Freddie Gruber. I know you talked about him a little bit in this thing. So, and one of the things just for me, you actually kind of inspired me indirectly, because I know the story is you talked to Neil Peart about Freddie.
Yes.
And he went to study with Freddie, and it kind of changed his approach to drumming. And that's how I learned about Freddie, was hearing that story. So then watching Neil and then watching you play, and then starting to see some videos on Freddie and how he approaches drums and his techniques and his fluidity and that type of thing. And that actually changed the way I approached the drums. So
that's pretty cool.
So first of all, thank you for that, because that I wouldn't have known Freddie if it wasn't for that interaction. But talk a little bit about Freddie, what he did for you, and some of his concepts.
I met him in 1990, and right away was very interested in studying with him. And he told me he was going to help me get out of my own way.
Right.
And I didn't really know exactly what he meant by that at first, but I can say that when I was starting out, and you can see these photos in the book, when in my high school years and right after high school and college, you can see that my grip, the way I'm holding the sticks, it's almost identical to the way I hold the sticks now. So I had better technique then. And then when I started playing with Journey in 78, I started to compromise my technique in order to play louder. So just using this pencil, like there's a balance point. You want the stick to be balanced, like, and I'm holding it like traditional grip style, so the stick has some play. But if you go way to the back, and I was holding it like you'd hold a hammer or something,
exactly.
And so I could get like a loud stroke, but then what would happen? The stick would just die right into the head.
Right.
It wasn't like a self-perpetuating response. So meaning, like, Freddie wanted to combine the way that the human body worked most efficiently with physics. Like, like bouncing a basketball idea versus like, you don't want to jam that basketball into the floor and hold it there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was doing. And it's probably what a lot of drummers do.
Yes.
Is they hold the stick. And so each stroke is an individual event.
Right.
It starts and stops, and then you have to start it up again. Versus getting out of your own way means you can allow the stick to fall. Gravity brings it down. When it hits a drum, it just comes back by itself if you allow your hand the freedom to get out of the way.
Right.
And another key point is, Freddie would say, with a drumstick, it's a percussion instrument that you only hear half of the motion. So what does he mean by that? You only hear half of the motion. People are more interested in the impact of the tip of the stick hitting the drum rather than the entire motion. So an instrument that you hear the whole motion would be like a shaker.
Okay, right.
Or a tambourine.
Right.
So you're hearing both sides of the motion. It's like those old metronomes.
Right.
Yeah.
And they work because they're taking up a certain amount of space. And if that space is consistent, the click is going to be consistent. The sound of the metronome. And the same with the drumstick. If your motions and everything's fluid and you're really conscious of what's going on as the impact, and then as the stick comes back, it becomes like this very fluid in-time motion that will self-perpetuate after a while. So it really does, he really had keen insights, and then he could help people go step by step. It's not, you can't just explain it and have somebody do it.
Right.
You'd have to, because everyone's going to learn at a different rate, and so much of the lessons in some ways is undoing bad habits.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So
Yeah.
and it would get easier and easier to play as I unwound the bad habits and just allowed the stick to do what it naturally wants to do if you just relax, let it drop. And then I realized, and as he said, like I was trying to play loud one day and I was at his house and he goes, "Why are you hitting that drum so hard? Are you mad at it?" I said, "No, but I want to play with power." And he said, "Power is for dictators. What you want is a big sound."
Wow.
There you go.
He helped me get a big sound. Like you can draw a big sound out without pile driving a stick into a head. So it was, that gives you some of the ideas of what kind of things.
One of the things that he's famous for saying, and one of the concepts when I play that I still in my head here is there's no straight lines in nature.
Right.
That's easy. And that was one of his big concepts. And this whole concept of circular motions and that type of thing completely changed the way I played. So it is amazing. It's an amazing concept.
So it's almost like you knew how to dance, but you weren't, you would stiff. You needed.
Well, he used dance in the lessons, and he would, because he would say, here's the top of the drum, and when I hit the drum with my stick, he said you're perceiving the point of impact is actually about an inch below your head, and that's why you have dents in the head.
Right.
And because you continue that downward energy after the stick hits the head. So if your head looks like the moon with craters, there's a good chance.
Right.
Very true. The point of impact is below the surface of the head. And then he would dance and he goes, "Look, I'm not driving my feet through the floor as I dance. I'm just on the surface, just playing right on the surface of the floor. And you just want to play right on the surface of your head." So he was right. At this point, I don't break sticks. I use very thin heads. They have no pits or dents in them, so, and they last a long, long time. So those bad habits also created broken sticks, broken cymbals, and dented, as well as the choke sound.
Yes.
Right. And probably some pain too, because that's a lot of
pain.
Yeah, that's amazing. That was such a master class.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Thank you for that.
Yes.
So, do you remember what was your earliest recollection of that this is something that I could do?
Drumming. You're talking about in general.
Yeah, not dancing.
Yeah.
Although if you want to talk about dance, we'll talk.
I think it happened very early on. I started when I was 9 years old in the 4th grade, and somehow by maybe the 6th grade, 7th grade, I just identified with the idea I'm a musician.
Nice.
It became part of my identity. So it happened naturally, and I never considered not being a musician.
Right.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Incredible.
Well, George experienced it firsthand when he went to spend a Sunday. He called me up later that night. He left me a message. He's like, "Dude, I gotta talk to you." He had such a great time.
Yeah. So this was a couple of weeks ago. George and I met at Tim Northup's Drum Museum in Oneonta, New York. There we are. You see Tim on the left, and we're standing in front of one of his kits. Like, it's drum museums. He specializes in, I would say, drums from the 20s, 30s, 40s. And he's got some from, I think, older and newer, but that's his specialty, with these beautiful painted heads. Like, that's the butterfly girl drum head, and you can see these temple blocks. It's something like a something kind of kit that Chick Webb would have played.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. It's a work of art.
Yeah, really beautiful. And he's got them tuned beautifully, and he wants people to play them. So we had some good jams in the museum. Had a lot of fun just playing those, hanging out.
But you know, it's funny because it's also an education. You know, going through that museum, it was for me, even for my wife. You know, my wife is not a musician, but she's been with me. We've been married for over 20 years, and so she's seen all my music and my gigs, and she's always been there. And she's dealt with my big drum sets in the middle of the room and all this. But I didn't think that she was going to have as good a time as she did. When she walked out of there and we were leaving, she looked at me. She goes, "That was amazing."
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when my wife says that's amazing, that means it was amazing because you learn the history of a lot of these sets. You learn, and we got to see a lot of great instruments that you've never seen, that I've never seen before. Some of these things that there's only 2 or 3 or 4 in the world of these things. Yeah. So you know, it's just a beautiful education. You get to see amazing sets. You get to play them, and just learn about it. It's fantastic.
Right.
And we're excited.
Tim does a good job of explaining what all these, what the drum sets are, where they came from, and all these accessories like that the percussionists used to use to accompany silent music, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's well worth visiting if you're in the area.
And Tim is going to be visiting us here on the 27th of September.
Right.
So we're very excited to talk about that. And I want to just quickly just play a little video for everyone. It's a 3-minute video. It's George and his trip.
And George's wife took the videos.
That's right. Yeah, she's a videographer. I don't know if you paid her properly, but is she in the union?
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on. was awesome.
That was so much fun. I mean, that was.
Oh, you
I
know what?
like that.
Go
The
ahead.
last bit when you're George, when you're playing the windmill kit and you see the low boy, like
Yeah.
before the hi-hat, seriously, it's like these two cymbals like about 6 inches off the floor. They call it the low boy.
First
Yeah.
time I've ever played one. It was amazing.
Yeah.
You know
And
what? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, in the middle of that, like there's in like the inside the museum, then there's Tim's practice room where he's got his modern kits.
Right.
And that's when we were jamming and we were playing the beats, the Bernard Purdy beats to Rock Steady, the Aretha Franklin tune. And we were getting down with some Rock Steady there. But
that's
yeah,
awesome.
there's some really fun jamming going on. I like that room that we're playing in. You're playing the main kit, and then I start playing the woodblocks and the cowbells, and then Tim just can't handle it anymore, and he's got to run in and start playing too.
Unfortunately, it ended at that point. But
yeah.
I don't know if you have more of it, George. But I'd like to. If
I have the full jam is on Facebook. So yeah.
So one thing that I noticed was when you were doing the snare, from the education that you just gave us working with Freddie, I realized you're almost levitating sticks. Like I started really just focusing on just the grip, because normally I'm hearing, I'm a guitar player and I'm just deaf, right? But I just want to hear, and I'm seeing now you almost like very lightly holding and letting the sticks do a lot of the work. And your hands are dancing over it literally just blew my mind when I was watching it now, almost for the first time, because I've seen the clip already at least 4 times. But that was amazing.
But now that with some context,
exactly.
Yeah, it looks different, and I am holding the sticks lightly, and you can see they're just kind of dancing in my hands and they're coming away from the head. It's not driving into the head, but they're just coming off of the head. And it's actually it feels easy for me. It feels like, in a way, it's effortless, and the sticks feel weightless. They're just like floating there.
The weight of the stick is actually you're utilizing the energy that the stick is creating to make the next, to keep it going. It's almost like a battery. It's just you turn it on and
it perpetuates after a while.
I love it. I love it. That was cool. So George, I want to ask you,
yes, sir,
because here you are with Steve Smith, and you were in the room. What was your takeaway? Working with someone. I don't know how you feel, Steve, about calling you a legend, but I'm sorry, but you are. And
my first thought was, how could I even be in the same room? But again, it goes back to that concept of what we were talking about earlier, is when you're actually seeing it live.
Yeah.
Because I've watched Steve. I saw Steve live once years ago, but then most of the other stuff has been videos, whether it's Vital Information or his YouTube videos. But actually being in front of it and just studying the way, just how he plays the snare drum, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But and obviously it makes you as a performer and a drummer think, okay, I got to get back to my rudiments and really get my stuff down. But it's just an amazing thing, and it actually inspired me, because I the last few years I haven't played as much as I really wanted to, and it actually has inspired me to play more and to go out there and gig more and stuff like that, which is what I plan to do. So
that's awesome.
Well, and to make music together, then I'm in musician mode.
Right.
So so we're working together to create a sound.
Exactly.
That's collective, and it's just so we get into the musician mode. And when you went into Tim's practice room with the modern drums, you have a huge vocabulary of all these different drum parts.
Oh yeah,
drum beats, and I could identify the song. Winwood songs and Michael Jackson songs, and all of these songs that you were playing that I knew from the drum part. So that's pretty cool when you have such a wide vocabulary of those kind of beats like that.
Yeah, John, and it's funny, John. Steve had asked me. He goes, did you have to play those in at live gigs, or did you just learn them? I said, well, some of them I actually did play at live gigs because I was playing with cover bands that played those songs.
Right.
And then some of them, like for example, the 50 Ways thing.
Right.
You know, I'm a big fan as well of Steve Gadd, and learning his 50 Ways groove for me was just kind of helping me improve myself, because I watched the video of him teaching that groove, and I had no concept of how he actually ever played it. So when I started working on it, it actually improved my playing just to learn that, you know. So I take those little pieces and I incorporate them into my playing because it does make me better.
Yeah.
Yes, sure. Awesome. It expands your idea of what's possible and gives you some more vocabulary. That's
exactly.
Great. Yeah.
And I do also want to thank your graciousness, you know, of actually spending time with George and just doing that. You know, we throw around the word legend and stuff like that because of your amazing playing, but really the legendary part of who you are is you as a person, because you're just a kind person and just really, you know, it's a lot of times, especially now the way the world is, when you see that, you know, you really appreciate somebody's just graciousness of what they've accomplished, and now that they're willing to kind of give back and talk about that journey, because it's going to inspire so many more people. And that is something that that's where the legend really comes to play.
Agreed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I feel I live with a lot of gratitude. I've been very fortunate, and I had the freedom to develop my artistic passion for drumming and I feel really fortunate for that, that I've had a life like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad to connect with other musicians and especially other drummers and to share when I can. In fact, I just spent a week in LA teaching at Drum Fantasy Camp.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned Dave Weckl, like he was there. So the four teachers were myself, Dave Weckl, Simon Phillips, and Mark Juliana. And I'm just coming back from that, and I'm inspired.
Right.
We had so much fun playing together, and hanging out and just having food together and listening to music together. And then we'd sit in, because Vinny Valentino, who was the guitar player in Vital Information, he organized a really great band. And so we, as teachers, all played with the band, and all of the students. So there was over 60 students attended this 5-day drum camp in Los Angeles, and they all played with the band. So it was just really enjoyable to do that. And all of us, teachers, we all enjoy teaching, as well, because that's not our main gig, but it's like a really enjoyable hat to put on and to go do that, to go do the teaching and sharing.
That's wonderful. We love it. Well, we're at 54 minutes.
All right.
This was amazing. I want to actually just remind everyone, Birdland Jazz Club in New York City, 5 consecutive weeks with 5 different groups, September 16th through October 16th. You can go on to the website and you can get all the information there. Get your tickets, because I'm telling you, you guys are going to be blown away. And I think George, you're going to try to get down there, definitely. Right? And Vital Information approaching 2023 40th anniversary, and we're hoping to get some new music. And that's going to be exciting. Of course, also don't forget, you can get this as well right there on the website. I've played this to death already. I actually got a CD player because I didn't really have a CD player, so I actually got a CD player so I could play them. It was great. So thank you, Steve.
And, just real quick, everybody.
Real quick.
Check out this amazing book.
That's right.
With Steve.
And you can get the book at moderndrummer.com.
Absolutely.
And also Hudson Music.
retrospective of his life. It's amazing.
Yeah, Hudson Music is selling it, and you can get the print version or the download, digital version onto your computer. And so, yeah, check that out. And I appreciate you guys inviting me back for part 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for us. Thank you so much, Steve. We appreciate you. If you want to hang on 1 second, we're going to close out the show. We're going to say good night and thank you.
All right. Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Right.
Woo.
Wow.
Man, it's just inspiring, and I really learned a lot about.
Yeah, no, I mean,
technique.
just that clip there. I mean,
Yeah.
any drummer can just watch that clip of
That's
Steve
an
talking
education
about
right there for
what
anyone.
he was, his concepts of snare
Tremendous.
and the grip and everything. Right there is just a whole. It's years worth of education right there.
Amazing. All right, well, folks, thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate you so much. We will be back again next week, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we spotlight conversations with creative minds here on Counterparts. For George Batista, my name is John Henry Soto, and we'll see you next time. And as always,